My name's Jon Lockwood, Deputy Chair of ARBIC and Chair of the Imported Honey Subcommittee. So there's a few in the room that are involved in that committee, Lindsay being one. Shout out to Lindsay. So a bit of a caution statement to start with. ARBIC definitely acknowledges that imported honey is having an impact on our farm gate pricing. So we need to be really careful in this topic. We've seen a few scandals in the media the last few years, and unfortunately it doesn't matter if it's Australian honey or imported honey, it can affect the sales of honey on the shelf. So we've got to tread very carefully in this space, and as a result we'll be holding any testing results internally for that reason. And yeah, I don't pretend to be an expert. I'm merely just a beekeeper trying to pull this all together. So if you've got any technical questions, I'll probably refer straight back to Lindsay. So probably the biggest caution statement with imported honey, a lot of people really are worried about it, and they're stressed that it's affecting our prices, which is true, but there's no silver bullet. We cannot just pull a trigger here or there and stop it. So I don't want to pump your tyres up too much and think, yep, we're going to get this done, but at the same time we're doing all we can to overcome it. So market trends, yep, 100% imported honey is affecting our market, but there's a few fairy tales out there, I guess, that the amount of imported honey coming into Australia is increasing. So that, in fact, is not true. So we've seen, since imported honey first arrived in Australia during the droughts, yes, it's increased up to about 8,000 tonne per annum, but it's plateaued there and it's still just cruising along at that level. So no, it's not true that more and more and more is coming in. Yes, we see different trends. We saw when New Zealand had issues with their industry over there, a lot of their honey was coming over. Their ground flora honey was coming into Australia very cheap. But yeah, I'm happy to say that they seem to have sorted their industry out and they're getting good value for their product in New Zealand and exporting it to other countries, and it's simply not viable to come here anymore. So other factors that are adding to our current oversupply, since the last drought, a lot of states or beekeepers have seen above average seasons, so we've all had a pretty good run, I think. Victoria, I believe, has had a good production in the last few years. So interestingly, since 2019, we've had 200,000 extra beehives added to the Australian population. So that's a lot of beehives producing a lot of honey, which is adding to the supply. So about half of those are recreational, about half are commercial. So we're seeing for the first time that non-levied honey has overtaken levied honey. So for me, that's unbelievable. I'm lost for words. So, you know, we're probably producing 20,000 odd tonne in the commercial sector. They're all paying levies, but then there's another 20,000 tonne that aren't paying levies. So where is that going? I guess a lot of it's going through farmers markets, you know, stands, giving its old mate over the back fence. So that's really having an impact on the supply of honey in Australia. And yeah, finally, in the market trends, we're at the lowest point of export since the 1960s. So we're not selling any honey out, or not much honey out of Australia. So multi-pronged approach. So I rang up Danny, our CEO, and I said, hey, Danny, I've got a few people that want me to talk about imported honey. What do I do? He said, oh, that's easy, mate. You know, just talk about our multi-pronged approach. Yep, easy, hang up the phone. I'm like, shit, what's that? So get on Google, multi-pronged approach. A multi-pronged electrical plug. I thought, oh, mate, he's having me on again. I know I'm not very smart, but this guy, you know, he's just having me on. I've had enough. Anyway, I read point 2, multi-pronged assault on the enemy. So that's what we're doing. And the multi-pronged approach can be applicable to not just imported honey, but many other things, as we'll see as this conference proceeds. So, as I said, there's no silver bullet to tackling honey, so we're attacking it from all angles. So, international rules of trade. So there's a lot of talk in the industry. Why don't we just stop imports? Why don't we put a tariff on imports? Why don't we put a tax on imports? We just can't. We're in a free trading country. We cannot put any sort of restrictions on products coming into our country. We're signed up to the World Trade Organisation, and it's just that simple. We just cannot do that. What we can do, we can look at biosecurity. We can look at domestic product standards. So we've seen Liz, speaking about, and BQual, getting our own standards up. So that's one of the really important aspects that we need to take on. Testing and protocol rates, which I'll lead on to next. So the issue, we've heard from Liz and BQual that our standards of honey coming into Australia is pathetic. It's absolutely hopeless, okay? So we've got C4 sugar adulteration. Liz touched on the moisture content. She said, no way that my honey would ferment at that, and reducing sugar. So there's only 3 parameters that that the imported honey has to adhere to that are not very strong at all to enter our shores. So we look at the FISANTS definition, which you guys can read there yourself. It's a very lovely, hairy-fairy sentence, and it doesn't really have much guts about it at all. So as an industry, we assumed, we stand at the bar, they're drinking beer, imported honey, it's all adulterated, but we don't have any facts, right? So we need facts to do something about it. So in the past, ARBIC have tested honey off the shelf, and we've found, this is adulterated, guys. This is fake honey. There's something in this. However, we go to DAF and the ACCC, and they don't want to know about it, right? They go back to that top graph there, and they say, no, we only test for this, so your testing doesn't mean anything. So what are we going to do about that? So in ARBIC, in our subcommittee, we've started an imported honey fighting fund, and we raised about $30,000. So $20,000 from beekeepers and honey packers, and $10,000 from the producer contingency fund. So I'd really like to take this point to drill home. $20,000 from industry was donated from 6 individuals out of the whole industry. How can we do anything about it if we're not getting support from our industry? So that's one of the big reasons I'm here today, and Steve Taggart will be up soon. He'll tell you more about ARBIC and how important it is for beekeepers to invest in your own industry, in the Imported Honey Fighting Fund, and also Friends of ARBIC. So after much consideration from relevant experts, Liz being one, thank you Liz, I've never met you before, but we've spoke over email, so we'll catch up later. We went around in a bit of a circle. What are we going to test for? What methods are we going to use? And it is a bit of a circle, a bit of a scramble, trying to come up with the best methods. In the end, we landed on the international standard, well, it's not a standard, but the most commonly used methods for determining adulteration in honey. So you can see there's 3 columns, 3 separate tests. Some do some things well, some don't do things well, but if you put them all together in layman's terms, you get a result. So we've obtained random samples of imported honey off the shelf. So they've been sent to the labs, and we will be testing it using that protocol. So that got us thinking, okay, that's great, we're getting the honey off the shelves, but what about the honey going to the industrial sector? How is that how are we going to test that? So we're in the process of approaching DAF, and as they take their 5% samples that enter the country, we're asking for a duplicate as well, so we can test it ourselves. So after testing, depending on the results, if we've got a case, then we'll go to DAF and we'll say, hey guys, this is your test, you're not picking anything up, this is our test, this is what we're hopefully finding, do something about it. So that's what we're all about. We're about getting the data, and we need some solid evidence to present to DAF. So the International Organisation for Standardisation. So ARBIC has been chairing that committee, and that's another avenue that we're taking to try and get the standardisation of honey changed. Biosecurity, that's our next prong. So importing honey, maybe it's a risk to our biosecurity in Australia. Not sure. But if you look at New Zealand, they don't have European foul brood, therefore no honey is allowed to go into New Zealand. So we've did a bit of searching around, and we found some papers suggesting that deformed wing virus might be able to be transferred via imported honey. So, and as we're aware, we believe Australia is currently free of deformed wing virus. So we took that paper to DAF, and it wasn't quite strong enough. Yes, it identified fragments of PCR testing in the honey, but they said we need something a bit stronger. So we've been working with some universities. So Sasha from ANU, he's been looking at doing field trials in Australia, and it was just too complicated. So he was about to go 2 weeks ago to New Caledonia and do the actual trials over there. But yeah, we saw there's some political unrest over there, so that's on hold for the moment now. Advocacy. So every time our CEO or chairman go to a meeting, they talk about imported honey. So that's right at the front of their mind. So all those people there, that's a list that our CEO has lately, within the last 12 months has met with, and, telling them how much of an impact imported honey is having on our industry. So that if we go to them with a case, if we go to Murray Watt and say, hey, look what we found, he's got some prior knowledge, he knows about it. Anti-dumping. So we've been asked by industry to investigate anti-dumping of honey into Australia, which we have done. So we've engaged with some specialist lawyers on that topic, and me personally, I can't really see that we'll get much traction there. So if we look at the media a couple of months ago, we saw that Australia had an anti-dumping claim on, I believe it was railway wheels, windmills and stainless steel sinks from China. So, yeah, then a bit later on, we hear that the World Trade Organisation had overturned that decision. So it's kind of a bit of tit for tat. But as soon as we heard that that decision had been overturned, the Chinese turned around and said, oh, okay, we'll start taking Chinese wine again. So we not only have to make sure that we get some tangible outcomes for what we're going for here, but also if we want to increase our exports of honey out of the country, that we don't stir up the bear too much. Anyway, doesn't matter what I think, what I believe. The subcommittee and the ARBIC executive thought, okay, let's pursue it, let's have a look. So therefore, we've gone to Rigby Cook lawyers, and they're conducting an investigation on the domestic honey trade within India to get some data on the board, and we'll tackle that as it comes. So the supermarkets, this is another proposal to the ARBIC executive from the subcommittee. So at the moment, the supermarkets are copping a bit of flack, and I'm sure they're screaming for a good news story. So the proposal is we go to the supermarkets and we say, hey guys, we want to be friends. We want you guys to support our honey, promote our honey, reduce imported honey on the shelf, and therefore you guys can tell everyone all these fruit and veggies that we're growing, all the almonds, the watermelons, the apples, the cherries. We're supporting all these industries by supporting the bee industry. So it's kind of a way that we're trying to manipulate the supermarkets to promote our industry and pay for it. So that's a bit of a proposal. I'd be keen to hear from people in the audience at lunchtime what they think of that. So, in conclusion, that's our multi-pronged approach: supermarkets, biosecurity, advocacy, anti-dumping, testings and protocols. But we probably should add one in there, and that is the looking after our own honey and proving that it's nice and clean, and we can, if there's any problems, that we can jump back and say, hey guys, we've got evidence that we've got some good stuff here. Thank you very much for listening.